It began as an ordinary journey to work in Essex. This is the chilling true story of 19-year-old Jill Brown, who vanished without a trace in 1978. Some disappearances become mysteries because there are too many clues and too many possible explanations. Others are disturbing for the opposite reason. A person leaves home for something completely ordinary, and somewhere between one familiar place and another, the trail simply ends. No confirmed meeting, no publicly identified crime scene, no final message that explains a sudden change of plan. Just an ordinary journey that was supposed to end at work, and a family left waiting for someone who never came back. That is what makes the disappearance of Jill Brown so difficult to shake. On Tuesday, the 3rd of January 1978, Jill left her home in Dovercourt, Essex. She was 19 years old, and she was heading back to work after the Christmas holidays. Her destination was a laundry on Brooklyn Road. According to Essex Police, Jill never arrived. She has not been seen since. Almost every question surrounding the case begins with that short journey, because whatever happened to her appears to have happened before she reached a place where people were expecting her. Dovercourt sits on the Essex coast beside Harwich, in a part of the county shaped by the sea, the railway, and the nearby port. Harwich has long been associated with ferry traffic and travel across the North Sea, while Dovercourt itself has the character of a smaller coastal community. Brooklyn Road, where Jill worked, was not some remote destination hidden miles from civilization. It was part of the area she knew. That makes the disappearance feel even more unsettling. Jill was not setting out on an expedition or traveling into unfamiliar country. She was going to her job. The official description preserved by Essex Police gives us a clear image of the young woman being searched for. Jill was about 5 feet 2 inches tall. She had shoulder-length brown hair. On the day she disappeared, she was wearing a blue MAC coat. Those details would become part of the appeal for information, but physical descriptions can only help if somebody remembers seeing the missing person. In Jill's case, the publicly available record has never produced a confirmed final encounter that explains where she went after leaving home. Her family have spent decades trying to keep Jill from becoming nothing more than a name attached to a cold case. In later appeals, her sisters Janet Steele and Elizabeth Hutchins spoke about the person they remembered. Family recollections described Jill as quiet and very comfortable at home. Janet remembered her as an early riser who liked making breakfast before other people were awake. Elizabeth said Jill was not rebellious and had been content with home life. Those are personal memories rather than evidence of what happened, but they matter because they help explain why the idea of Jill simply abandoning everyone she knew has been so hard for her family to understand. There is another detail from later family accounts that has added to that uncertainty. Jill's sisters said she had not taken the sort of belongings they would have expected if she had planned to leave permanently. They recalled that clothes, Christmas presents, and money had been left behind, describing the situation as though she had simply gone to work. That account does not prove that a voluntary disappearance was impossible. People can make decisions without warning, and families do not always know everything happening in a relative's life. But if those recollections are accurate, they remove one of the more obvious signs of preparation for starting a new life elsewhere. The 3rd of January was Jill's first day back at work after the Christmas break. That detail comes directly from Essex Police and gives the day an almost painfully normal shape. The holidays had ended, work was beginning again. There was a known destination and an expectation that Jill would arrive there. Then the reliable timeline stops. Publicly available police information does not provide a verified departure time, so any claim that Jill left at a particular hour would be speculation. It does not identify a confirmed bus journey either. There is no published ticket record, no authoritative timetable reconstruction placing her on a specific service, and no verified account establishing every stage of her route. That absence of detail matters because older retellings of unsolved cases often become more definite with time. A possibility becomes a rumor becomes a detail, and eventually the detail is repeated as though it had always been established fact. In Jill's case, the safest reconstruction is also the starkest. She left home intending to travel to the laundry on Brooklyn Road. She did not arrive there. Essex Police say she was last seen in Dovercourt. Beyond that, the exact sequence of her movements has not been made public in a way that allows a precise minute-by-minute reconstruction. Some accounts describe Jill's younger sisters expecting her to return later that day and realizing she was not on the bus she would normally have taken home. That part of the story comes from family reporting rather than the short official Essex Police case summary, so the exact timing should be treated cautiously. What is beyond dispute is the outcome. Jill did not return to the life her family knew. By the end of that day, the ordinary expectation that she would come home had been replaced by uncertainty. For investigators, the disappearance presented a problem that has never publicly gone away. There was no known location where police could say with certainty that a crime had occurred. No publicly identified body has been connected to the case. No suspect has been publicly named by Essex Police in its current appeal. And according to reporting by ITV News Anglia, there have never been any arrests in the investigation. That does not mean police possessed no information, interviewed no witnesses, or followed no leads. It means the surviving public record gives outsiders very little from which to reconstruct the original inquiry. This distinction matters. It would be easy to fill the silence with assumptions about searches, interviews, forensic work, or suspects. But without documentary support, those details would turn a true story into something else. What can be said is that Jill was reported missing, the case remained unresolved, and Essex Police later placed her among its cold and unsolved cases. The force continues to present the core facts of her disappearance publicly, and Missing People has also maintained a profile for Jill. Over the years, other claims have circulated around the case. Online discussions have repeated stories about an alleged lorry sighting, a medical condition, regular injections, and the possibility of amnesia. Those claims have appeared in secondary discussions referring to older local newspaper coverage, but they are not supported by the current Essex Police summary or the strongest publicly accessible reporting available for the case. Without the original archive material being checked directly, they cannot safely be treated as established evidence. For a case this old, that boundary between documented fact and inherited rumor matters enormously. What remains can be divided into only a few broad possibilities, and none has been proven. Jill may have left voluntarily. She may have suffered an accident. She may have encountered another person. Those are not accusations, and they are not confirmed police conclusions. They are simply the major categories that exist when someone disappears without a verified explanation. The problem is that the publicly known evidence does not currently allow one of those possibilities to rise clearly above the others. A voluntary disappearance raises obvious questions because of how Jill's family remembered her. She had a job. She was described as home-loving. Her sisters later said she took none of the belongings they associated with deliberately leaving. But personality is not proof, and possessions left behind cannot tell us what someone was thinking. Without a note, confirmed later sighting or communication from Jill, the theory remains possible but unsupported. An accident raises a different problem. If Jill was travelling through or around Dovercourt, where could an accident have happened that left no confirmed public trace for decades? Again, there is no published evidence pointing to one. The same applies to the possibility that she encountered somebody else. Essex Police have not publicly identified a suspect in the current case material, and the absence of an arrest leaves no responsible basis for naming anyone or constructing a scenario around an unknown person. That lack of evidence becomes even more striking when placed against the passage of time. The disappearance happened in 1978, before mobile phones could reveal a final location, before widespread CCTV could record a person's route through town, and before digital payments created constant records of movement. A journey that might now leave dozens of electronic traces could then pass through the day with almost none. If someone saw Jill and did not understand the significance of what they had seen, that memory may have seemed ordinary at the time. Years turned into decades. In 2012, Jill's father died without learning what had happened to his daughter. By the time ITV News Anglia reported on a renewed family appeal in 2023, Jill's sisters were still searching for answers. Janet Steele was then 68 and Elizabeth Hutchins was 54. Their mother was 91. The appeal was no longer only about solving an old mystery. It was about a family growing older, while the person at the center of it remained forever 19 in the photographs used to search for her. The sisters said they wanted answers for their mother, and their appeal was directed not only towards anyone who might know something, but towards Jill herself. That is one of the cruelest uncertainties in a long-term missing person case. Without proof of death, a family can never completely close the door on the possibility that the person might still be alive. Hope and fear can exist at the same time, even after decades. By then, more than 4 decades had passed without an arrest. No confirmed public breakthrough had identified what happened between Jill leaving home and failing to reach work. No later communication had resolved whether she chose to go elsewhere or was prevented from arriving, and no publicly verified sighting had rewritten the last known chapter of her life. The power of this case lies in what remains missing from the story. We know the date, we know Jill's age, we know where she was going, we know what she looked like and what she was wearing. We know that people expected her at the laundry on Brooklyn Road. But the single piece of information that could transform the entire investigation has never become public. What happened after Jill left home? Someone may have seen something that morning and dismissed it as ordinary. Someone may once have known more than they realized, or the explanation may depend on evidence that has never been found. After so much time, even a small detail could change the understanding of the case, because the gap investigators are trying to fill has always been remarkably narrow in one sense and enormous in another. It begins with one young woman leaving for work and ends with nearly half a century of silence. Jill Brown was 19 when she disappeared from Dovercourt on the 3rd of January 1978. Her father lived the rest of his life without an answer. Her sisters carried the question into middle age and beyond. Their mother reached her 90s, still without knowing where her daughter had gone. And that leaves the case where it has stood for decades, not with a dramatic revelation, but with an unfinished journey. Somewhere after Jill left home, the known facts stop. There is no responsible way to invent what fills that space. Until evidence does, the mystery remains exactly where it began, on an ordinary working day in Dovercourt, with a young woman who was expected at a laundry on Brooklyn Road and never arrived.